Well, hello.
Hey, what's going
Happy
on?
week. Nothing much, nothing much, just dismantling government agencies and stuff. What's going on with you?
Busy day. Busy, busy day. Busy day. But nevertheless, we're here. We're here. Hopefully, we don't spike out.
I don't know if I have the energy to spike out. I don't even know. I don't know how I feel right now. I just,
You
let's just
sound
jump
so
into
deep.
it. I am. I really am feeling very defeated right now. I am. I'm not gonna lie. I am. I honestly am. But it is what it is. Let's go ahead and jump into it. We're gonna go ahead and start with
I mean, you can say hi to
Department
the
of Education.
people. Hey, people,
I'm
how are
sorry.
you all
I'm sorry.
doing? We're so glad to
Hey
have you.
everybody.
Welcome to Teacher Project 2.0. I'm El Teddy 27, and this is my co-host, Really BTV, and we're here today during the summer to tell you all about things involving education, schools, that be K through 12 education, post-secondary education, and all things in between and out of between. Um, I will say, really, B, I think that people think that education takes summer vacations when actually most of the formative decisions that involve the school year happen during this time of year. End of
True.
June, up to the beginning of throughout July, beginning of August are some of the busiest times of year where you have the most substantive decisions about your respective school boards and your individual schools within your communities and your state DOEs. And as we'll see today, even on a national level, the U.S. Department of Education, because
Yeah.
most school systems,
And
I would say 99%, start their fiscal year on July 4th. Not July 4th, July 1st.
July 1st.
So a lot of things to discuss during this time of year.
Yeah, and for myself as a Title One coordinator, I've been, even though I'm not on the clock this summer, I've been working. I've been, responding to emails, sending out emails. I've been on a couple of Zoom calls, and I ain't getting paid for it. Okay, so for all y'all people that are like teachers, they just off for the summer. A lot of teachers are still working, and they ain't work, and they not getting paid for it. They're not being compensated for it. Let's be clear. Okay, all right, but anyway. With that being said, we're going to go ahead and, honey, we're going to jump into these things because, baby, I am. And, here's the thing. I'm going to say this. It's not that I haven't been paying attention to what this administration has been doing. And it's not that I have not. I mean, clearly, I come down here and we talk about it and things of that nature. But you know how 20 things can happen, but it's that last thing that was like, it was just a straw that sort of broke the camel's back. And this Supreme Court decision last week, it just, I don't know how to describe it, but it deflated me. It really did, if I'm being honest. And I'm always going to want to come down here and talk to you guys, but some weeks are harder than others, and I'm just going to be very honest, and this is a hard week for me. And on a variety of levels. One, I have friends that work at the Department of Education who have literally been on a roller coaster the last couple of months because it's you're fired. Well, no, you're not fired. Oh, no, yeah, you're fired. Well, no, you can come back for a little while, but we're not sure, and it's like people are really dealing with real stuff, and I know everybody is. I get that, but I'm just talking about where I am right now. So I'm not just talking about it from it's a personal situation. I have friends whose lives have, real time being affected. As the Title I coordinator at my school, this affects me on a multiple levels, and just when we talk about why the Department of Education was started and what the Department of Education actually does, which a lot of people don't know.
Billy B.
Yes.
You are already adding your commentary. We got to get the news out first.
Do you want to moderate today?
I don't know. Is this what I'm having to do today? Are we switching roles?
I was just trying to speak. Let me read this article.
And your commentary is great, but I think it adds to it once we kind of get to what's happening, because many people just may not be aware of what's happening.
No problem. It's not a problem. It's not a problem. Let me get to the article, y'all. Let me get to the article. That's what we do for each other. That's what we do for each other. Let me get to the article. All right. This is dated July the 14th of 2025. It's coming from NPR. Supreme Court says Trump's efforts to close the Department of Education can continue. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled Monday that it would allow the Trump administration to resume dismantling the U.S. Department of Education. The court stayed a preliminary injunction issued in May by a federal judge in Massachusetts. That injunction had directed the administration to stop gutting the department and to reinstate many of the nearly 1,400 workers the government had laid off. Monday's ruling is not the final word as the case continues to work its way through the lower courts, but it deals a serious blow to the states and school districts who have filed lawsuits who worry about that. Without an injunction, much of the damage done to the department before the final ruling will be impossible to reverse. The court's decision was unsigned, and the majority did not explain its thinking. Justice Sonia Sotomayor did offer a sharp dissent, saying the decision is indefensible and that it hands the executive the power to repeal statutes by firing all those necessary to carry them out. The majority is either willfully blind to the implications of its ruling or naive, but either way, the threat to our Constitution's separation of powers is grave. In a press release, the U.S. Education Secretary Linda McMahon said, while today's ruling is a significant win for students and families, it is a shame that the highest court in the land had to step in to allow President Trump to advance his reforms. Americans elected him to deliver using the authorities granted to him by the U.S. Constitution. So much is wrong with that sentence, but moving right along. Monday's ruling was set in motion on May the 22nd when U.S. District Judge Mayang Juan, I hope I'm saying your name right, no disrespect if I pronounced it wrong, issued a preliminary injunction blocking President Trump and McMahon from carrying out an executive order calling for the closure of the Department of Education. Juan also ordered the administration to restore the department to the status quo and more specifically to rehire the hundreds of employees who were told in March they would lose their jobs. A department without enough employees to perform statutory mandated functions is not a department at all, he wrote. This court cannot be asked to cover its eyes while the department's employees are continuously fired and units are transferred out until the department becomes a shell of itself. That injunction also temporarily barred Trump from following through on a pledge he made in the Oval Office to move management of the entire federal student loan portfolio and the department's special needs programs to other federal agencies. On June the 4th, the U.S. Supreme Court of Appeals for the First Circuit agreed with Juan's assessment, and the deep staffing cuts have made it effectively impossible for the department to carry out its statutory functions. In his application to the Supreme Court, Solicitor General D. John Sauer wrote on behalf of the Trump administration that the government has been crystal clear in acknowledging that only Congress can eliminate the Department of Education, and that these staffing cuts were not part of a department gutting, but simply an effort at streamlining and thus within the executive purview. The Constitution vests the executive branch, not district courts, with the authority to make judgments about how many employees are needed to carry out an agency's statutory functions. In their written defense of Juan's injunction, the plaintiff's attorneys told the Supreme Court that if the dismantling of the department is allowed to go forward, even if they ultimately win their case in court, it will be effectively impossible to undo much of the damage caused. The case is in consolidation of two separate cases which brought up in March in response to the administration's sweeping moves to shrink and eventually close the education department. The plaintiffs include 20 states, including the District of Columbia, as well as the American Federation of Teachers and 2 school districts and other unions. So there it is.
I think the problem here is when you read the Supreme Court decisions, it doesn't take into effect what this administration has already said they want to do. I understand them saying, well, it's not the district court judge's place to tell the executive branch how many employees they need to do the job of that particular agency. On itself, maybe I could, understand you making that ruling, but I don't think you can make that ruling without understanding that this man has said out of his mouth, I'm cutting the Department of Education. Get over it.
Right.
And you can't have it both ways, because if you decide to allow him to do that, you essentially are saying he could say you only need one person in order to run an entire agency. And you know full well running an entire agency cannot be done by one person. So you've essentially gutted and essentially shut down that whole agency, an agency which was enacted and voted on by law from Article 1, an agency whose budget is appropriated by law via Article 1. Article 3 cannot come back and say, yeah, but we just gonna let Article 2 decide everything with regard to this agency. That's not how that works. And you know that's not how that works. I'm not going to even allow you. It's like Sotomayor said, you're being willfully, you're not being willfully ignorant. You know exactly what you're doing. You know exactly what you're doing. Now, let me take a swig because y'all about to be mad with me. Go ahead and get pissed off and get mad with El Teddy right now because you're going to get mad. Hold on for a second. Now, what the hell are we going to do? There's your question. Because last I heard, there were stupid people telling us to check out. I'm not talking about the people who said, listen, take a break, take a breather. It's been a lot. Regroup and go. I'm talking about the people who came out here and told black people, this ain't our fight. We ain't got nothing to do with this. We don't need to care about nothing. Because here we are. Here the fuck we are. And I'm sorry, I usually don't use that colorful type of language, but we are here at damn it threat level red. We are here at a moment where entire institutions that are so vital to the success of black people are being stripped away. let's be clear. And I'm not going to mince words about this. I would argue equally as important as the Justice Department is and was to Black people being able to live and have freedoms and rights in this country, the Department of Education is equally as important. There's the big three that have been vital to the survival of our people. That's the Justice Department, that's the Department of Health and Human Services, and that is the Department of Education. Because without education, without our children and even adults being able to be formally educated, being able to be provided with access to the educational resources that they've needed, we do not have success as a people. That's the long and short of it. And and when people were saying we're not going to be bothered, this ain't our fight, we're going to check out, you give unfettered access for these people to just do whatever they want. And did you think they were not going to do this? This woman has nothing to do with education. The woman was over here, the CEO of Fake Wrestling. We have a woman that was in charge with make-believe Fake Wrestling that is now in charge with one of the most important agencies for our people. You legitimately had Democrats and Republicans and Democrats that voted to confirm this clown. And you got people out here telling Black people to check out and this ain't our fight. And I kept saying, when you check back in, it may be too damn late. Because let's be clear, the whole reason they formed the Department of Education was because of our Black asses. The whole reason initially for the formulating of this Department of Education was to make sure that we were offered the same types of resources, funding, proper education as everyone else. I'm just saying, these people are now doing everything in their power to come at us. Y'all can get distracted by them disappearing people who support Palestine, them disappearing members of the Hispanic community and Latinx community and deporting them. You can get distracted by all of that if you want to. We are the end game. Hell, we were the beginning game. They are coming for us. And if we don't wake the hell up and say, damn, this is coming at us, stripping the Department of Education, you know what that means. That means that they're going to start to do what, really be? Give block grants to states. Think about a state like Tennessee, Texas, Florida, Louisiana, Oklahoma, Alabama, Arkansas, Mississippi. Think about what that's going to look like, really be, where you give them hundreds of millions and up some cases upwards of billions of dollars and say, hey, here you go. Just figure out how you need to spend that. What the hell do you think is going to happen? They're not going to give our people, our kids aren't going to get the vast majority of those. They're already cutting. They've already stripped funding, really be. We saw the grants being stripped. There's states suing right now for summer school programs, for free lunch, for free breakfast. Those programs gone. Gone. Thank you for coming. Please drive safely. My question is, what institutions do we have now? Because I don't see any formulated plan. I don't see any institutions that historically have been the linchpin in civil rights or the promoting of Black issues. Where are they on this? Because they've been silent and quiet on these things. Where are they on that? I like you, really, be. I share the sentiments. I don't know what the hell I don't know if there's anything we could do at this point to move the needle or stop the inevitable. And it's going to be a very sad commentary when the history books write about what happened and what we did at this point. Because I'm telling you, what they want is they want preliminary bending of the knee. They want you to be fearful. They want you to be afraid. They want you to be scared, because that's what authoritarian dictatorships do. They rain terror on people. They want you to say, oh, I can't speak bad about the government. They might come snatch me up. Oh, we can't go protest because they might come snatch us up. Oh, we can't voice dissent because we may be snatched up. And now you have people preemptively bending the knee and being subjected to this, and there ends up being no way out of it. Fear is what they want. And now you've had the entirety of Article 1, the legislature just abdicate their power to them. The Supreme Court has been bought and sold by these people. So what left? The only thing left is the voice of the people, and they are now silencing the voice of the people, and or have people so in fear and so afraid that they are silencing themselves. And that is the part that I'm most afraid of. That last part, that we, the people who elect all of these people, have become so afraid, so fearful, that we have allowed them to cause us to silence ourselves. And we become complicit in our own demise. And I'm going to shut up now and go off screen because I might have spiked out.
All right. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know, y'all. I don't have nothing. I mean, I don't know. I got nothing. As far as where we are, I mean, I got nothing. When it comes to how it's going to affect you all that have students in school, I mean, the effect is going to be across the board. We already talked about the fact that the first thing they did when they started firing people at the Department of Education, the first place they started firing people was in the Office of Civil Rights. So if you have a child with disabilities, if you have a child that's LGBTQ, if you have a child that's a minority, that's who's going to be hit first. And then it's, it'll trickle down across the board from there. Again, for me, it's just a blatant disregard on the part of the Supreme Court, because it's like you are just willfully neglecting your fundamental duty, like what your job is. But anyway, that's where we are, you guys, and we'll keep you posted. We'll keep you up to date. Again, there's still a lot of pending lawsuits, but honestly, I don't have any faith that any of those lawsuits are going to get past the Supreme Court at this point. I just feel like it's just a matter of time as it trickles its way through the court system, and then when it gets to the Supreme Court, it's going to be pretty much the same thing. But with that being said, let's go ahead and just get into our next article, child. Let's get into our next article. Well, let's go ahead and do this one. El Teddy spoke on this when he went off on his, monologue. Let's get into this one about the effects of I went to dinner. I was telling my subscribers I went to dinner last week with some people, and one of the people I went to dinner with, she's a teacher in Virginia, and she talked about how she does the summer school program every year. And this year, they were basically told in May that there was no money for the summer school program. And for those people who don't understand what the impact of that is, if you are a parent that was relying on your child going to summer school through the school system for enrichment services, and that's what your child has always done, maybe because you don't have the money to pay for a summer camp, or because you feel like your child needs those services, needs that extra help. Not only is that program now gone, but they didn't tell you that program was going to be gone until I think she said either April or May. And you guys know, I mean, anybody that's ever had to worry about trying to get kids in a summer camp, by April, it's too late. Even if you have the money to pay for a camp, it's too late to find a camp in April. 99% of camps are full, and there's probably a wait list and everything else. And that was in Virginia. And that was in a pretty affluent, it's in Fairfax County, Virginia, which overall Fairfax County is a pretty affluent county in Virginia. Now, I mean, all counties have the up and the down. And she worked at a school that was more the Title I side of things, but still, we're talking about an affluent, so if an affluent county had to make those types of cuts, we can only imagine what it looked like for the school districts that are already struggling. So this article, July the 11th, from Informa, school districts grapple with budgetary chaos in the wake of federal funding freeze. Programs at risk due to the funding hold include English learner services, academic support, after-school programming, and professional development. The U.S. Department of Education's withholding of $6.2 billion with a B in federal K-12 grants has local and state school systems scrambling to figure out how to make up for the budget shortage. It has also caused a swell of advocacy from families, lawmakers, educators, and others from across the nation. The withheld funds for fiscal year 2025 were expected to be released by the Education Department July the 1st. Programs at risk due to the funding hold include English learner services, academic support, after-school programming, and professional development. The frozen funds represent at least 10% or more of states' K-12 overall federal revenues if the money is not distributed according to the Nonpartisan Learning Policy Institute. So, at the local level, superintendents and principals are voicing concern about how the funding freeze will impact their school services, particularly those that serve English learners, homeless students, and students from low-income families. Chase Christensen, principal and superintendent of the 80-student Sheridan County School District number 3 in rural Claremont, Wyoming, said his district was expecting $30,000 in Title I and Title IV funding that's being withheld. The district had nearly finalized its roughly $4 million budget for the upcoming school year when it learned about the federal funding freeze. It then adjusted the budget to remove those federal funds and is making up the difference by leaving a staffing position vacant. Although the budget adjustment means student services under those programs can continue, Christensen said every dollar of federal funding for education is impactful and at the individual student level. When these funds are pulled, especially this late in the game for budget planning and everything else, students are going to be the ones that lose out. Nationally, bigger districts have the largest funding gaps, according to a new American analysis of data from 46 states that had available funding figures. Those districts include Los Angeles Unified School District at $82 million, Florida Dade County School District at $38 million, and Nevada Clark County School District at $22 million. Advocacy groups and policymakers are calling on the Trump administration to restore the funds. The Boys and Girls Clubs of America, a nonprofit that supports after-school programs, said the impact of the blocked funds will be swift and devastating. Clark said that 926 Boys and Girls Clubs across the country could close and 5,900 jobs will be lost if the funding is not released. After school and summer learning programs are cornerstones of academic success, public safety, and family stability for millions of young people. But right now, we stand at a dangerous tipping point. The National English Learner Roundtable, a coalition of more than a dozen national and state-based organizations supportive of English learner services, said in a Thursday statement, this unprecedented move by the department has blindsided schools that have always been able to rely on those funds to support the start of the school year and has created budgetary chaos for nearly every K-12 school district. On Thursday, 150 Democratic House lawmakers sent a letter to U.S. Secretary of Education Linda McMahon and White House Office of Management and Budget Director Russell Vought, demanding the funds be released. This late-breaking decision, which provided no timeline for which states can affect a final decision, is leaving states financially vulnerable and forcing many to make last-minute decisions about how to proceed with K-12 education in this upcoming school year. The funding hold has already led to staff layoffs, program delays, and cancellation of services, the House member said. Spending under review. The withheld funds were appropriated by Congress and approved by President Trump earlier this year. States expected to gain access to the money starting July 1st as routine, but the day before, on June the 30th, the Education Department told grantees not to expect the funds while it conducts a review and referred questions to OMB, and that's the Office of Monetary Budget. Management budget. Anyway. The specific grant funding withheld includes the following: Title IIA for professional development at $2.2 billion, Title IVA for student support and academic enrichment at $1.4 billion, Title IVB for 21st Century Community Learning Centers at $1.3 billion, Title IIIA for English Learner Services at $890 million, Title IC for migrant education at $375 million. Well, you know that migrant, that money ain't, you know they ain't getting that money.
Don't forget the English language learners either.
Yeah, they ain't getting that either. Yeah, the English language learner money and the migrant education. That now some of those other maybe, but those two, you can pretty much write that off. That ain't happening. That's not gonna happen. On Thursday, in a statement to K-12 Drive, OMB said no funding decisions have been made and that it is conducting a programmatic review of education funding. The office also said initial funding shows that many of these grant programs have been grossly misused to subsidize a radical left-wing agenda. OMB said the Education Department have not indicated a time frame for the review of the frozen federal funds. The Trump administration has said it is scrutinizing spending across all federal agencies to ensure there is no waste, fraud, or abuse of taxpayer dollar. Republican leaders have said they want to reduce the scope of the federal government to give states and districts more financial decision-making. Additionally, since Trump's inauguration in January, the Education Department has sought to lay off about half of its staff temporarily, withheld federal COVID-19 emergency funding, and scale back educational research, and promised to shut down the agency. That COVID-19 money is another reason why a lot of school budgets are having issues, because they were using that money to supplement certain things like hiring staff and other things like that. And now that money is gone, those people that they hired or programs that they started or resources that they purchased with that COVID money and that money they thought they were getting this year, by that not being there, again, the impact to staffing is going to be a major impact. Okay, this is the last part, y'all. Supplement, not supplant concerns. All the turmoil is making a toll on school and district education leaders, said the Center for Reinventing Public Education in a recent post. To support districts, CRPE recommends that state education agencies provide clarity about funding rules and help districts craft innovative solutions for budget shortages. Finding funding deficiencies such as potential district consolidations may also need to be considered. Christensen, the Wyoming principal and superintendent, said clarification and guidance from his superintendent networks and the National Association of Secondary School Principals has been helpful to him during this moment of funding uncertainty. Christensen was named Wyoming's 2025 Secondary Principal of the Year by the Wyoming Association of Secondary School Principals earlier this year. AASA, the School Superintendents Association, meanwhile, is telling its members that the supplement, not supplant rule for federal funding, the practice of using federal fundings to replace state or local funds, should not be a concern at this time. I'm sorry. AASA points to a 2013 Education Department letter that said if a district needs to use local dollars to make up for a funding shortfall in federal money, then the latter receives the federal funding. This scenario would not trigger a supplement, not supplant concern because the local dollars were being loaned or fronted to fill the federal funding gap. The 2013 letter also recommends districts document if they use local funds to fill a federal funding shortage. Not they using a letter from 2013 and think it's going to apply in 2025, but okay
then. The problem that we have is COVID funds notwithstanding. I'm gonna just push the COVID funding to the side. These people are cutting title funds. Now, if you know anything about the funding structure within education, Title 1 through 4, I believe, concern itself. Let me go back to my master's, my master's programming. Instruction. Title 1, 2, 3, and 4 specifically speak to federal funds and funding, and they are cutting those funds. It'd be one thing, and it would be, we could totally fault the states and or districts for being dependent on COVID funds if that were all that they were cutting. They're cutting funds from Title 1, 2, 3, and 4, which are the 4 places where federal funds come from. So now, and here's and if you look at when they kept saying we don't got nothing to do with that, we're reviewing it, and that's the only time, the one loophole you have where when Congress appropriates funds through an agency, there's a loophole in the law that says if they are reviewing, they can say that we're reviewing the allocation of these funds and withhold, and that gives them a reason and mechanism to withhold those funds, right? So when the DOE says, hey, we're reviewing these funds, and people say, well, what are you reviewing them for? And their immediate answer is, go talk to OMB, Office of Management and Budget, right? Which is led by Richard Vaught. Now, some of you are smart enough to know, because we have well-informed and knowledgeable pupils here. Some of y'all know who the hell Richard Vaught is. If you do not know, Richard Vaught is the main author of Project 2025. He is the main author, front page author of Project 2025, who's now the head of the Office of Management and Budget. Right now, if you paid attention to what really be said, the Office of Budget Management, the OMB, said that they believed, and they were reviewing this for programmatic purposes, because they believed that this was being used for woke ideologies and things like that. Meaning, you're spending money. We don't like the fact that you're spending money, and not that it's not the right place to spend money, not that it hasn't been reviewed, not that it hasn't been aligned with educational pedagogy, not that it hasn't been vetted out to make sure that it is duly put in place and implemented to enhance the educational process. None of that. We don't like that, and therefore we don't want a part any parts of money being spent on that. Let's talk about some of the things they don't like. They don't like scientific reasoning. They don't like science that says there could be things like climate change, global warming. They want no parts of supporting that. Let's talk about other things they don't like. Oh, you want to talk about the plight that women have in professional environments and the fact that they don't earn as much as men? Nope, no parts of that. Taking money away from that. Oh, you have professional development to discuss how teachers and instructors should be sensitive to different cultures, races, ethnicities, so as to ensure that that child receives an adequate education. Oh, we don't want no parts of that because that's DEI. Screw that. What else don't they like you teaching? We don't want you all spending any money to provide accommodations for those students with special needs or that are special needs or need accommodations for whatever 504 plans. No parts of that. No, none at all. Let me snatch all of this money from y'all and keep that and keep those funds, right? And so now, what does the public school system have to do? We're in the hiring process. And if you don't have the funds to hire anybody, you're not going to hire anybody. On the other side, here's what they're going to do. I promise you we'll be reading an article about this. They're going to use those same funds appropriated to these states to give to school voucher programs, to give to school choice programs.
Absolutely.
That's what we're going to be reading in the coming weeks and months, right? And so now you slashed all of the funding, all of the personnel from K through 12 education. You're going to appropriate them all to private schools, many of whom are owned by billionaires and friends and acolytes of these conservatives. Because what happens? Second week of school, once they get the money, they're going to send those children back to public schools. The same public schools whose programs you've gutted. The same public schools who you've snatched all the money from. The same public schools who could not hire teachers, support personnel, and all the other staff members and faculty who don't have the faculty anymore, but now end up with the same children that you just give them enough money for. Here's what we have. Here's the endless cycle. All because you have a problem with you with your fragile white egos. Let's call it what it is. It's the fragile white ego, because your mantle of white privilege and breastplate of white supremacy is in question here. And God forbid teachers care about the needs of students that aren't lily white. God forbid that a child speaks another language because for whatever reason, not their own, they're in this country and they are entitled to an education like anybody else. Nope, you don't speak English. Damn not the hell, I don't care. You have special needs. Screw your special needs. Your mama and daddy need to pay for that on their own. We don't give a damn. Here's where we are. Here's where we are. This is where we are. We first talk about the gutting of the Department of Education. Now that same gutted out Department of Education is now stripping school districts and state departments of education of funding. Now it's left to the states. We just what was that, 2 weeks ago in Texas, when they found out they were not getting money for after school programs and for school free breakfast programs, you know what Texas said? We ain't paying for that no more. The state will not, the federal government ain't paying for it. We ain't paying for it either. So there's no more free breakfast and free lunch in 98% of the Texas school districts, unless the individual school district picks up the tab, which they don't have the monies to do. After school programs, because you might happen to get off work because the school get out at 2:30 and you don't get off work till 5 o'clock, baby, we don't have nothing for you. Find something for your child to do. Maybe you could teach them old school like we used to do, really be when we were little. You know how you had to walk home from school, you had the key to the house, and you had to go take, you're gonna have to go, black people, we're gonna have to go back to those times. Well, you have to teach your
latchkey kids.
You got to walk it on home. And here's the key. And don't let nobody in my house. I got the Ring camera. I'll be watching. You know what I'm saying? This is where we are, where we're now starting to have to make real world decisions because the rubber is going to hit the pavement. And while people seem to give the least of energy toward the education department and public education, they forget and negate how important the Department of Education is to their everyday lives because they've never had to think about it. They've never had to consider, oh, that's the school board. They always going to be that. That's the Department of Education. They're never going to do anything with that. And here we are.
Well, here we are. Let's just use a perfect example. And you know, prayers to the families that were affected by the floods in Texas. But now we find out that in real time, what these cuts are doing to people's lives in real time, when literally people were calling the FEMA office and ain't nobody there to answer the call. Why? Because they done fired everybody. Or when we find out that Biden and Obama tried to give Texas money for these infrastructures to try to hopefully avoid something that happened. And, oh, we don't want that money. Biden, keep your old funky, you know, socialism money. And now here we are with 200 people dead and missing in Texas, and it's still flooding. It's not making the front page news anymore, but it is still raining in Texas. Okay. So it's like, this is the real time stuff. And so, like El Teddy said, when school starts, now, like I said, some people already felt it over the summer when there was no summer programming. But when school starts, and like you said, stuff like your kids can't eat lunch at school anymore, or get breakfast at school anymore, or there's no before school or after school care for your children, or there are no services for your kids. And let's be clear about something. ESL stands for English Language Learners. It's not Spanish. It's not limited to Spanish. We have, you know, contrary to what the news shows you, we have people that are immigrants that are white, that they skin like this, and they speak French, and they speak German, and they speak Portuguese, and they speak all these other languages, and English is not their first language. So when it starts affecting those kids, then you're going to start getting what we're going to start getting, El Teddy, I didn't vote for this. That's when we're going to start getting the I didn't vote for this TikTok videos. You absolutely voted for this. You absolutely voted for this. The problem is because you were so ignorant, you didn't fully understand everything that the Department of Education does, and you thought it was only going to hurt the Black people, the immigrant, the Latinx community. Dr. S says, in my district, we have 156 languages. Exactly. But hell, what do you expect when the president of the United States doesn't know that the official language of Liberia is English? What the fuck do we expect? I don't know. Anyway, we'll definitely keep you posted on that because I'm on the front lines and I'll let you know what it looks like. Thankfully for me, my district, number one, it's not going to affect us immediately because one, we had reserve funds. But it's going to definitely affect the more rural red states a lot faster. But we'll see. Last but not least, we have this last article, you guys, to get into today. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. This out in Indiana. And Indiana's working hard. They trying to get into they trying to get into the trilogy over here, LT.
Yeah, the holy trinity of racism, discrimination, and bigotry.
Yeah, they've been working overtime these last year, baby. They've been working hard. They said, don't forget about us.
Hey, really, we have a few states that go for that third and last, spot. The first two spots are solidified. Texas is number one.
Said, don't forget about us.
Florida, Texas is always the first one. Florida is always the second one. And that third one, it'd be several states fighting for that third one. Virginia be fighting sometimes, Tennessee, North Carolina.
All right. So this article is coming from NPR WFYI out of Indianapolis, PBS out of Indianapolis. It's dated July the 14th. So here we go. In an effort to erase DEI, Indiana cuts school and college programs. Here's what got targeted. In a sweeping policy shift, Indiana state agencies have ended funding for multiple education initiatives and scrubbed dozens of materials that reference diversity, equity, or inclusion, part of a directive from Governor Mike Braun to eliminate what his administration calls divisive ideology. The changes affect both K-12 schools and public universities with impacts on students, teachers, and college outreach efforts. The executive order issued earlier this year required agencies to eliminate all initiatives labeled diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI, which the administration described as incompatible with merit, excellence, and innovation. State reports show that 70 DEI-related trainings, instructional efforts, or programs have been removed so far. Indiana has replaced the divisive, politically charged DEI ideology with merit, excellence, and innovation. A level playing field where every single Hoosier has the chance to get ahead with hard work, Braun said in a statement. The executive order touched nearly every corner of the state's education system. In K-12 schools, the Indiana Department of Education conducted a wide-ranging audit to remove references to equity and inclusion from state academic standards, instructional materials, grant applications, and websites. In higher education, a grant program overseen by the Indiana Compassion for Higher Education that targeted first-generation students, students of color, and others from underrepresented backgrounds was not renewed. The Indiana School for the Blind and Visually Impaired and the Indiana School for the Deaf, which are both state-run, were required to strip DEI-related language from their handbook and policy documents. You mean the school for the visually impaired, the blind, and the deaf had to strip the language diverse, equity, and inclusion? Okay. Okay, I'm just gonna keep reading. Sorry, I'm sorry, y'all. Y'all know sometimes I get a little triggered. I'm just gonna keep reading. Among the most valuable cuts is the Pardes Estrellas initiative, which embedded Spanish-speaking outreach workers in schools and neighborhoods to help Latino families enroll in the state's 21st Century School Scholars Program, a college scholarship for low-income students. The Commission for Higher Education ended the program last month. In 2023, CHE Commissioner Chris Lowry described the state's low college-going rate for Hispanic and other students of color as unacceptable and an emergency. The programs and materials now being phased out are detailed in a 444-page document released by the Braun office. And it includes, I'm just going to read you guys some of the highlights. It includes a STEM teacher recruitment grant. It's used to fund Black teacher residency programs, schools with leadership shortages in underserved areas. That will expire in August and will not be renewed. The College Success Program that funded coaches to support first-generation students of color at Purdue Northeast Indiana State University and Valparaiso University will not continue into 2026. The Department of Education will take over the Career Coaching Grant Program to ensure future funding aligns with the executive order. The state's college equity reports on student preparedness and success by race and ethnicity, socioeconomic status, and gender were removed from the CHE website. Now, that was higher education. Let's look at K through 12. Videos on the state online learning lab which are meant for families, teachers, and administrators, were removed if they included phrases like to support diverse learners and inclusive classrooms, or reference the essential role of equity and inclusion in the new science standards. I'm sorry. They do understand that to support diverse learners, that's like special ed teachers, students of IEPs. They do understand that. Okay, no, they don't. Academic standards tied to ethnic studies, certain social studies topics, and employability skills are undergoing formal review to eliminate language deemed inconsistent with the executive order. A state-issued guide for applying to the High Ability Program grant was revised to remove references to equity and access and underrepresented populations. And again, equity and access could be a wheelchair ramp. Anyway, let me just keep moving. The state's application for a federal charter school grant program will no longer include the phrase diverse and equitable learning opportunities, which means they don't have to accept anybody of color. If El Teddy starts a charter school and he don't want to invite any Black kids to his school, he don't have to. That's what that means. An Indiana Department of Education spokesperson, in response to questions from WFYI, said the department will continue to elevate the importance of improving outcomes for all K-12 students. This means ensuring each student has access to supports based on their unique learning needs, Courtney Barach said in an email. Advocates for these programs worry their removal disproportionately harms students already facing systemic barriers. In Marion County, for example, less than 56% of Hispanic students read at grade level by third grade, a key predictor of later academic achievement. Mark Russell of the Indianapolis Urban League said Braun is now taking a stance that Indiana will treat everybody the same regardless of their standing or circumstances. Russell worries that these new policies, coupled with the Trump administration's overhaul of the U.S. Department of Education, creates an environment where students who will benefit from additional support will be left behind. Redacting equity from classroom policy. The Department of Education's purge of DEI references extend beyond K-12 standards, which outline what Indiana students are expected to learn. The department changed grant conditions and pressured national partners to remove DEI language from strategic plans if they wanted to keep working with the state. A vendor that provides student assessments for the state, Smarter Balance, removed a DEI page from its website at the department's request, according to the report. In other cases, national accreditation bodies and technology organizations altered planning documents after being contacted by the department. Even a letter from Secretary of Education Kate Jeter to local school leaders was flagged. A draft version of the Teacher of the Year nomination letter circulated earlier this year described an ideal candidate as someone who fosters a school culture of equity and success. So, like El Teddy, we talked about this earlier in the year. They're literally just using like a search engine and putting the word in and just taking the word equity, inclusion. They're taking it out. It doesn't matter in what way it's being used. They're literally just taking it out. That's pretty much it. Hold on, let me make sure I covered it. I think we pretty much get the gist of it. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I understand, Andrew. I 100% understand, baby. I get it. I do. El Teddy, what you got?
Here we are. Let me attack it from the post-secondary front. People thought that I was being hyperbolic when I said that their removal of all things diversity, equity, and inclusion on college campuses would include any and everything that promoted Black, that promoted Hispanic, Latinx, that promoted any type of race, to include your BSUs, your Black students unions, your Hispanic student unions, to include entities and organizations like the Divine Nine. We're just going to call it what it is. Because sometimes, Really B and I, we get up here and we blather about and we bloviate all over the place about why we should care about all children. And people just blow it off like, okay, well, let me bring it back home. Because sometimes y'all don't care unless we give you real world instances and examples of how it could affect you. Yes, that means that your son, your daughter, your family member, you yourself who may go to school, you can and will be discriminated against. I didn't say you can, I said you can and will be discriminated against. You can and will be left out of opportunities because they are now saying we're going to leave it to the people in charge, all of whom tend to be white and male, to determine who gets what services get what, who gets what offers and everything. The white males in charge of everything are going to be the ones who determines and decide everything involving that university. And of course, they're going to be equitable about this. Of course, they're going to do everything in their power to be inclusive of this. Oh, excuse me. Can't have anything to do with equity. Can't have anything to do with inclusivity. So now we go back to the good old boys. We go back to the America where everything is the good old boys system, right? You got to be one of the good old boys. You got to have the 5 infinity stones. That's what we are. And that's K through 12. That is post-secondary. And some people are going to chop the post-secondary up to, well, those are adults. So they just need to learn how to deal with, and they need to learn how to, maneuver around society where they're not always the center of attention. Okay. What about my kindergartner, my first grader, my second grader, who now isn't afforded opportunities because they are automatically profiled because of the color of their skin? How many of you have children right now? Maybe you were that child who, because you were black, maybe you were one of the only and or few blacks in your class, immediately profiled as if to say you were less than, you were not as smart as you were. We've already broken down and discussed ad nauseum how blacks are pushed toward special education and IEPs, and white children having the same traits, characteristics, and behaviors are pushed into gifted programs with EPs. We've already discussed that. So you expect us to believe that in a country that has racism, discrimination, and bigotry interwoven into the fabric of this nation, you expect these people left to themselves to get it right and make sure that no one is disenfranchised? I'm just trying to see, Really B, what we're expecting here in lily white ass Indiana, right? Really B, lily white ass Indiana. This is what we're expecting. I don't want to scare people. I'm not trying to be an alarmist, but what I do want is I want you all to be informed, and I want you to be prepared. Now that you're informed, you need to be prepared. You need to start to grapple with, how am I going to approach this? How am I going to prepare myself for what is to come? Because putting your head in the sand and wishing it away is not going to make it go away. We have to be informed. We have to be begin to prepare ourselves for how we're going to deal with this. And if that means we have to beat them at their own game, really we're not going to beat these people with regard to privates and charters. So you know what we got to do? If you can't beat them, join them. We need to have programs where we open up our own charter schools, our own private schools, where now we can advance the causes of our people and our children and ensure that our children are being educated properly and edified. My only, and this I'll give it to you after this, really be my only trepidation with that is and you can call out the names. I won't call them out, but really we can call out the names of when we have schools like that. Some of the people in charge of those schools don't do right by us or those students, and it always ends up being somebody. Well, I shouldn't say always. I hate to do superlatives like that, but in many cases we end up with people who start off in inception the right way, and somewhere along the lines they go awry and they don't do right by our children and our people. And I'm gonna shut up, really, and let you go.
I just think at this point, and it's no secret that El Teddy and I think differently when it comes to what we need to do. But honestly, I think at this point, people need to fuck around and find out, because at the end of the day, nobody is going to care until it affects them. As long as they feel like it's just those people, it's just those immigrants that's taking all of the resources away from our kids. It's because of those immigrants. It's because of, affirmative action that I didn't get into college, or my child isn't being successful. Until I almost feel like, it's heartbreaking as it is, I almost feel like this just has to happen so people can understand, oh, wait a minute, that's what the Department of Education does? Oh, wait a minute, that's what USDA does? Wait a minute, most of us didn't even know there wasn't such thing as USAID until it was gutted. I just almost feel like people have to feel it on their front step for change to happen. I don't know.
My fear of that is these people find ways to contort themselves or these people, and we learned this from Trump's first administration. These people have revisionist when 2024 came. These people all of a sudden have revisionist history and remember, we were over here arguing with people because they believed that they were better under Trump, and they believed that Trump gave them all of these great things. They end up having these revisionist history moments, and they're like, where were you? Because that didn't happen. None of that happened. And they become delusional.
Also, people don't understand that when it comes to government, the president is always operating under the former president's policies. Like, people don't understand that either. So,
like, it baffles my mind how these people contort themselves to explain away what these people do.
Yeah.
Here we are.
Well, yeah, here we are, you guys. But however it goes, we will continue to keep you vigilant, no matter how painful it is for us to talk about it. We will continue to keep you guys informed, and we want you guys to stay vigilant. Continue to reach out to us. I've had people send me articles and that kind of stuff. That's always an open door to let us know what's going on in your state, your county, your district, your area. Certainly, if you're a teacher, I did see what Symmetry said. Is there a way that we can maybe get in touch with a civil rights attorney that works for the Department of Education to speak? I'm gonna be honest, I don't know anyone. I can maybe ask a friend of a friend of a friend. I have friends that are attorneys that may know a civil rights attorney. I just don't know. But I can reach out. I mean, we can try. The best answer for that is we can try. I think that would be great if we could get a civil rights attorney that can come and talk to us that worked for the Department of Education. I do know civil rights attorneys, but I don't know a civil rights attorney that worked for the Department of Education. I have friends that work for the Department of Education that may know somebody. So we can work on it. I can work on that. But I wanted to let you know that I did see that question. El Teddy, you going live at 5 o'clock over on your channel, sir?
That is the plan. I'm trying to get the dossier together. I don't have a lot of.
Okay.
I have 30 minutes to get the whole dossier together. God be with
Well,
me.
you've had less time and you've made it happen. So anyway, um, I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I don't know if I'm doing a live today. El Teddy, I'll text you. So if I decide not to do one, I'll text you and let you know. You can, take your time. Only reason why I say that is because y'all, I'm exhausted. I am absolutely exhausted. I haven't been sleeping well the last 2 nights. I've been going to the gym. So I am literally getting ready to go take a shower. And I'm going to lay down for a little while and I'll see how I feel. I'm see how I feel at about 6:00. If 6:30, I should say. I don't know why I just haven't been sleeping well the last 2 nights. And so it's kind of falling on me now. It's kind of, coming down on me. But I will do the Real Housewives of Miami review. That I will do. That comes on at 9. So I definitely should be out the bed by 9:00. And so we'll do that. But another thing is, it just ain't nothing out there to talk about. I don't care about Nicki Minaj going off on SZA, and I really don't think it's too. So if and that's the other thing too. I'm gonna scroll through the blogs, and if there's anything worth talking about, we'll talk about it. Other than that, I will see y'all later, over on the review channel to talk about the Real Housewives of Miami. If I'm being honest. So, but I'll text you, El Teddy, by 6 and let you know. Keep it moving. So he can take his time, you know how he
we'll
do.
Be here.
All right, you guys. Thank y'all for being here. We appreciate y'all. We're less than 2,000 watch hours from getting to what we need. I know we kind of haven't been pushing it the last couple of weeks. But yeah, it's 60 of y'all in here. Feel free to go and watch an extra episode or watch an old episode or share an episode out to your friends and family. Feel free to do that. And so we're trying to get there by the end of the year. We're trying to get there by the end of the year. Okay. All right. Final words. Doc.
Stay informed, stay vigilant. We're here.
All right. Bye. Peace. This will be a nice place for an outro. Good little outro.